So what we're going to do is we're going to go step by step through different categories of your finances, from credit and debit to cash flow to debts and so on and so forth, and give you a few tips that you can take action on this month to make sure that for the balance of 2025, you're doing the best you can financially. If you're listening online or you're watching and you want to get a copy of what we're going through on screen, you can find that copy by going to newmoneynewproblems.com/checklist. And we're going to get started today with cash flow. I have on screen a basic cash flow analysis that we do with all of our new clients or existing clients who have had a change in circumstance. It could be something like having a new salary or losing a salary, having a new child, deciding to send that child to a private school, what have you. And you'll see that we start with monthly income after taxes and benefits. One of the first mistakes I see when people do a cash flow analysis is they overestimate how much income is actually coming in the door. They don't think about the things like the employee benefits and the taxes that are taken out of your check. So we want to know what actually hits your account every 2 weeks. So we total up that income and then we start to chip away with expenses. And then at the end of the process, there are some numbers that we pay attention to. The first number is discretionary income. That is literally if I take your income and I subtract your expenses, what's left. Before we think into anything like paying extra or contributing to savings or investments, or even things like religious contributions, I want to know, if I just take your income and subtract your expenses, is there anything left? After that, we then take away things like charitable and religious contributions, the savings that you're currently making, and we figure out, are there any funds left after that process? And if there are, we title those funds unaccounted for. And those are two really important things to know. Discretionary income. Do I have money left after my expenses are accounted for? And if so, how much? And funds unaccounted for tells you, after I've thought through everything I can think of with bills and expenses, savings and contributions, there's still money that's here. It doesn't necessarily mean it's sitting in your pocket at the end of every month, but it does mean that you haven't given it a purpose. So for people who have surpluses in both of these categories, we start to build a plan for them. For example, if you have $1,000 worth of unaccounted for funds, do I think that you remembered everything when we did your cash flow analysis? No. But I don't think that you forgot $1,000 worth of bills and expenses. So we may take half of that number, in this case, $500, and we give it a purpose. Should we put that extra $500 towards a debt repayment? Should we put those extra $500 towards an investment goal? Sometimes that money actually goes towards guilt-free spending, because we come across people who feel ashamed at when they spend money on vacations, not knowing if it's something they should do or if they're overextending themselves. But when you go through a cash flow analysis and you have a surplus, the first thing we try to do is figure out, how do we put those surplus funds to use? And for those with a surplus who have determined a purpose for how you're going to use it, make sure it's automated. Do not lean on your own discipline to do things like putting more money into a savings account, investment account, or putting more towards debt. Make sure that you take the percentage that you're trying to deploy and that you set up an automated contribution or an automated payment so that technology can do the work for you while you're working as well. Now, the flip side to this coin is you may go through this process, you may have no money left at all. Matter of fact, you may be in the negative. And at least then you know that you're not crazy when you're trying to figure out why you're having to depend on things like credit cards on a monthly basis. And if you do find yourself in the hole at the end of this process, that's where we start to talk through, what options do we have? One of those options is looking at things like your withholding from a tax perspective. For example, if you're getting a huge refund every single year, but you're in the hole on a monthly basis, adjusting your withholding under the help of a professional could be something that adds more money to your monthly budget throughout the year. You could also look at your employee benefits to figure out if there's anything that you can do from that perspective that will increase cash flow. We've talked about these things in the past, things like utilizing a health savings account, which requires you to sign up for a high deductible health plan that likely comes at a lesser expense. Putting money into your dependent care FSA, your flex spending account, money that was already going to be used, but doing so before you pay taxes on these dollars can also improve cash flow. Retirement contributions is another one. If you're in a hole on a monthly basis, retirement contributions is another area that has to be addressed. Yes, if everything happened in a vacuum and your employer is offering matching dollars, then you don't want to leave that money on the table by not contributing that same amount. But if you've not yet gotten to the point where you have any savings, or if you have positive cash flow throughout the month, then you have to look at your retirement savings and saying, hey, If I'm giving 6%, but I only have to give 3% to get the match, I may, for a period of time until I can make some adjustments, need to drop my contribution so that I'm not giving up free money, but I put myself in a better position in terms of my monthly budget. In more severe scenarios where you have consumer debt that's drowning you, where you don't have any savings at all, we've talked about the fact that you may need to pause your retirement contributions until you can get to more of a level playing field. And the last way to look through that cash flow is the fact of the matter that at some points in your career, if there are things that you have to pay for that cannot be adjusted, and there's not enough income to pay for those things, we do have to sometimes confront the fact that we're simply not earning enough money. And we can either find a way to earn more money, or we have to find a way to cut some things that we don't want to cut. Things like that house that you don't want to leave, that program you pay for your kids that they love so much. And since cutting is a much more difficult thing to do, my perspective is I would rather try to find a way to go earn more money if that's one of my options.